Hey, Lisa here from Live Yummy, and this is the duvet cover that I'm working on right now. I am putting it together like a quilt to make it go from what was a twin size to a queen or full size. And so this is what it is looking like now that all the parts are initially stitched together. And what I'm doing right now is ironing all the seams flat. And when a few people come on, I'll be glad to show what it is I did to get to that. I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. This is the part where I'm taking this beautiful Sunday afternoon, summer Sunday, and I am doing a good job on this. I could have just sewn up the edges of this and shipped it out to her, and really there would have been nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with this just as it stands, but I decided that what I really want to do is flatten all these seams and then put a liner inside this duvet cover so that it will really hold up strongly for a long time. So in my little area, creative space here, I'm just ironing the inside of this cover to have all the seams open flat, so it and to make the pieces of fabric be nice and smooth, so that when I put the liner inside, it'll look really good and be flat and be the right size and all that. I find ironing very satisfying, although it's not the thing that I live for in life. But the way this is looking makes me so happy. And the person I'm making it for is someone I love so much that I am totally willing to do this for her. It has taken hours and hours and hours to get it to this point. So excuse me, sometimes the iron is a little hard to take. So that I'll show you the design I did. This started out as a twin size duvet cover that was this color, this green color, and of course, sorry about that, twin size. This started out as a duvet cover that was this color, this green color. And what I did, she wanted to go from a twin size to a queen or full. So what I did was I kept these parts. The part here, it's inside out. Let me show you the right side. I kept the parts that would be the hardest for me to replicate. The buttonholes, the seamy parts here, this whole buttonhole section where the opening is, where you open it up and put the full duvet inside. So I decided to keep that part and the green squares sort of around it. So when I drew out the drawing, I hope this letters might be backwards for you, but bear with me. I drew out the one side with the buttons and one side with the buttonholes, and I kept the green. I kept the green, and I kept the part that would be hardest for me to duplicate. I don't want to make a whole new edge here like this. So you can see here that I kept this whole section with the buttons and the buttonholes, both sides. And then I just made it bigger. And the bigger size, the queen and full, is more like a 92 inch size. And I forget what the I forget what the twin size is. It's like 70 something. So I just drew out pictures until I had the right numbers. It's a lot of math, y'all. It's a lot of math. But what I decided was I could have 23.5-inch squares, and I could have 4 across and 4 down and kind of end up with a squared off piece, and use the button and buttonhole sections and use the rest quilted with some additional fabric. So together we chose the additional fabric, and I cut them all up into the 23-inch squares. Some were smaller pieces, so I had to make a 4-up square with 4 pieces, but essentially they were all 23-inch squares. And so we've got together this really nice quilted pattern. It's a little hard to show you the whole thing, and they make me have it right side up, you know, a vertical orientation, so I can't show you it wide, but you can see that it's these 4, well, 5 really patterns: the cubed kind, the green original, a tan, and then this rust color that was from a dress of mine, an old dress of mine, and this was from an old shirt of mine. And these colors look really great together, and the person I'm making it for really likes all these colors together. So it's a pretty great combination of quilt. It's a really big piece to sew, and I don't have a very big area for sewing all this. So it has been a lot of work to put this stitching together. And now what I'm doing is, because I have the 2 pieces, this piece all sewn together and this piece all sewn together. And now what I'm gonna do, I could just stitch it up inside out and it could be ready to go. But I've decided I wanna make this something that she can really have like her whole life if she wants. And I don't know if these vintage fabrics are all sturdy enough that they'll hold up to that. I'm gonna turn you a little bit. Talk here and iron. I don't know if all these fabrics will hold up to this, but what I want to do is I'm ironing out each piece with so that the seams are nice and flat, and then I'm going to put a nice piece of liner inside it. I have a whole bunch of old cotton like flannel bedspreads, flannel sheeting and stuff, old sheeting that I've kept for years. Are you guys like that? Do you have like years of material? I'm gonna look to see if you guys have any comments or questions. Let me just pull it up on my laptop so I can see you. I don't know about you, but I have, well, let me just show you. Here, I'll show you. There's most of my fabric stash. That's not all of it, but that's most of it. And so, like, I am forever, like, holding on to fabric, but I don't always have the right use for it. But right now, the right use for these big pieces of flat white cotton is gonna be to have them be the liner for this. And I think, maybe you guys can tell me if you think that that's true or not. I think that having the liner on each side inside this piece should help protect it and make it last longer for when she pulls the duvet in and out of the duvet cover, you know. So that's what I'm hoping. Let me see if I can pull it up and just see if you guys have any suggestions or comments or questions. I'd love to hear them. Have you ever done this, like take a smaller piece and make it into a bigger piece? Like the key for me was keeping the buttonhole strip. I would never have done this piece if I had to make that piece from scratch. The rest was really quite easy. Simple. All I had to do was you know, just cut a whole lot of squares and stitch together a whole lot of squares. But the key was making sure I had enough pieces to fit in the grid, you know, that I drew out to make the smaller size fit into a bigger size, and to make sure I had the color that she wanted the most prevalent, that I had the most squares of that piece, of that color. So now ironing it, you know, takes almost as long as stitching it did, because it's just it's just a very slow process. But I'm halfway to the ironing. I'm so happy. It's a hot summer day in August, and really ironing inside is not the thing I had hoped I would do. I would love to know if any of you are working on projects today. Anybody working on a project? I would love to know what you're working on. If you didn't see the beginning, here in just a second, I'll show you the drawing that I worked from. Someone I love had a small duvet cover made of this green. Here we go, I'll show you here. Had a small twin size duvet cover that was this color, and it had these buttons in this section that opens up so you can put the duvet inside it, and wanted to go from a twin to a full or a queen. And so I kept this section that has the buttons and buttonholes in it, that whole strip. I kept that whole strip. Here, I'll show you the front part. I kept this whole strip. And then what I did was cut the rest of the duvet up into 23-inch squares, and that made it roughly so that I could make kind of a square size duvet cover that would fit a queen or a full bed. And that is having 16 squares on each side. I'll show you the drawing. And this lettering may be off as backwards for you, but it still shows you the idea. So one side with the buttonholes and one side with the buttons. I kept the green that's next to the original buttonhole strip, so I didn't have to redo that. Why redo that work? So I kept 2 green sections here and 2 green sections here. These 2 and these 2. So there's no stitch down there, but that's okay. And all the rest are cut up squares of 23 inches. And so they're 4 by 4. So there's 16 squares on each side. And then then I'll stitch the edges together, and it'll be roughly 90 inches by 90 inches, or, you know, 88 inches by 88 inches or something like that. I'm not worrying too much about the details because a duvet can fluff in or out a little bit, and it's going to be a lot bigger than what it was, and that was the original goal, so I'm happy with that. So what I'm doing right now is just ironing open all the seams so that I can add a liner to this on the inside so that the duvet cover will last as long as possible. And it's a beautiful Sunday summer afternoon, and I kind of wish it were a rainy afternoon, but I really want to get this out to my loved one tomorrow, so I'm trying to finish it today. I'd love to know if anybody who's listening has done something like this before, taken a smaller blanket, so to speak, and made it into a bigger one by making it into a quilt. I mean, I could have we did a bunch of drawings. I'll show you some of the drawings we did. Are they in, is this the book? Yeah. we did a bunch of drawings. Like, to take it from 74 inches to 90 inches. Could have just put a strip on the side, or we did all these other drawings. Like, it could have been quilted with something around the outside, or there could have been 8 squares, really big squares, or it could have been a design kind of like these, you know. And we just kept drawing sketches with a pencil to try different ideas out and see what looked good, but also as kind of that was simple enough that I felt like I could do it, you know. That was important to me. Then I wanted to try it kind of more of a free form drawing and see if I could come up with something more interesting, you know. Played around with that a little bit. But the truth is, I didn't really have time or the ability to do something super complicated. This one started looking like a very bad design that we wouldn't want. So we ended up just going for a nice simple grid pattern. And we had the simple drawings first, and then the mathematical drawings. And I'm here to tell you there's a lot of math. But the simplest thought for me was if they were 23.5-inch squares, that gave me a 1/2 inch on every side for a seam allowance. And it made it, a square was the simplest version. Then I didn't have to make sure I had it in the right direction or anything. And so then I had redrawn it in the end just to make sure that I had it a very clear template to follow when I was actually aligning all the different colors together to make sure I got it the right way. But so the key for me was to take a smaller green one and make it into a bigger one. I had to add more fabric, and so I did that by making it into a quilt idea. So by keeping the buttonhole section and the button section, that made the job much, much simpler. There's no reason not to reuse those, because that's the part where the duvet gets slid in, and all the rest of it is just stitching, straight, simple stitching. So then it was just cutting up all these pieces into 23.5-inch squares and stitching them together. It got a little more complicated in my case because two of the fabrics we wanted to use, they weren't big enough for 23.5-inch squares, so I had to make a 23.5-inch square out of 4 smaller squares. So that added a little bit of complication. There are 4 of these. So they end up looking like this. So that was a little bit more complicated, but totally worth it, because this shirt with this design on it totally makes the duvet cover. I mean, this is the star, really. This is the gorgeous fabric of the whole thing. And just a taste of it, you know, not the whole thing. It's just a fun little splash of color in this whole duvet. So it was worth doing that. It really did make it more complicated. If you have any comments or anything that you want to throw up, I would love to hear any thoughts you have about, you know, what I just showed you. I'd really love to know what you think. Is this something you've ever done before, or, you know, is there something I could have done that would have been smarter and less work, or is this all new to you, or are you, you know, much more experienced at this and have a suggestion? I'd love your input. I know I really could have done this without, like I say, I could have done this without all this ironing of all these pieces, but I really would like this. After all this work, I don't want this to just last a year and then be ripped and get thrown out. You know, I really would like this to last for her for a while. And I'm thinking that because the fabric, some of the fabric anyway, the fabric we added is all from my vintage fabric stash. I mean, it's just old fabric, you know, so like I don't know how long it's gonna hold up. And so the way I'm gonna strengthen the fabric is by putting you know, putting a liner in the back and behind it. I'm hoping that will help strengthen the whole piece. So I just really want to iron these out so that they're less, I don't know, maybe that's just an OCD thing. I just hate it when cotton is really going in all directions around the buttons. All right, any feedback, any comments? I'm not seeing any on my laptop screen. Maybe I'm missing them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Ironing is not a job I've really cherished doing in August upstairs, but you know, that's the way it is, right? I have a nice small area that's set up for all my fabric stash and this tiny little my husband's grandmother's vanity desk that I use as the sewing table right here. It's about 4 feet long and it's a tiny little vanity, and I have these long legs, and it's a very close space. But you know, it's better than no space, and I'm grateful to have it. I don't know if any of you have small creative space challenges, but boy, it is really, I have to really take care of my back and my feet and my legs and everything. I have to get up and move every so little bit because I can't stand all day and I can't sit all day. I don't know about you, but you know, you get to a certain age and it's just not, you know, I'm not 27 anymore. So I just have to be sure to take care of my body while I do things for others, right? Are you doing anything today to take care of yourself while you take care of other people? Oh God, that's so satisfying. Look at that, even that right out. Oh, I love that. Does anyone else love that? I love that so much. I love that so much. Satisfying. Satisfying. Satisfying ironing. Okay. Hot. All right, now we iron around the buttons. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? Seriously, like I'd love a question, or if you have a suggestion about what I showed. Has anyone if you've just come on new, I can go through it again. This is the part of the old duvet cover, the smaller duvet cover that I kept, because this is the part that's more work to replicate. So when making something bigger out of something smaller, I always try to keep the part that's the hardest to replicate, right? Why do more work than necessary? So this part with the buttons, where you stick the duvet into the duvet cover, I just cut this out of the smaller duvet cover. Wow, it's hot. And set the whole thing up around it. I built the whole thing around this strip of fabric. Where did I gotta iron that out too? And that was sort of the heart of the whole thing. I designed everything around that. Here, I'll just lay this here, so let me see, where can you see it? No, I'd have to stand it up. I can't. So I designed everything around it, and it's just, I took the rest of the smaller green duvet cover, cut it into 23.5-inch squares, and all the additional, gosh, I can't make my fingers work. All the additional fabrics, and which you'll see here in a second, I cut them into 23.5-inch squares, and I just stitched them all together. There's 16 on a side. Okay, there. So now, whew, so these are the other fabrics that are in it. And I'm really happy with how this is coming out. And I want to add a liner to it, so I've got to iron the whole thing so that the back, the liner can go on nicely and smoothly and the right size and protect the fabric and everything on the inside. So when she puts that duvet in and out of the cover, it's less likely to rip these old fabrics. You know, they're all cotton. They're all just a plain, simple cotton. It's not like these are, you know, industrial strength fabric. So I want to strengthen them with a liner. It will make the duvet cover heavier, and it will make it, you know, warmer, which where the user is could be nice, but you know, in the summertime that'll make it harder, of course, and it's more work for me. I know I could have just been done with it the way it was without even ironing it, but I don't know. Do you run into that problem a lot of like, should I do a more perfect job, you know, or a better quality job, or should I just be satisfied with it the way it is? I run into that a lot. I always kind of want to do a better job, but I know it's going to take more time. All right. So now we're on the back half, and all that's left to do is just iron and iron and iron here. And then, no, I can't really show them because they're buried in a bag, but I have a laundry basket that's filled with the white, like, flannel sheeting that I want to use as the liner for this. And I think it will make the duvet cover stronger. That's my theory. What do you guys think? I don't know if that's really going to work. I'd love it if anybody wants to chime in with your opinion on that. If you're an experienced sewist and you, I mean, I've been sewing since I'm a kid, but I'm not like super skilled at anything. I'm just sort of like your average Joanne at everything, you know. I don't pretend to be. I'm sort of a generalist. I don't pretend to be great at anything. What are you guys doing today? I'd love to know what somebody else is doing. Anybody else doing anything fun? Anybody else sewing or cooking or about to go swimming or just back from swimming on a hot August day? Anybody else camping out or making dinner or okay, we're getting there. The great thing about this being good for both a full size and a queen size is that, you know, if it holds up, if I've made it well enough that it will hold up over time, it can last a long time in a person's life, you know, from when you might have a full size bed to when you might have a queen size bed. It might even last, I don't know the size for a king size bed, but it might even work on a king size bed. So, I don't know, I like the idea of making things to last. My grandmother's did crocheting of blankets, and I have crocheted blankets from both of my grandmothers. I don't know if you have anything like that, but I love those. I love those crochet blankets a lot. They mean a lot to me that they've held up, you know, for, gosh, I don't know, 70 years, 80 years. Okay, so again, so this is the other half, the second half of what this duvet cover is looking like now that I've stitched together all the quilted pieces. So this is what it's looking like. This gives you an idea. And what I started with was a twin of this color duvet cover, and the strategy I took was to keep the most important part of that duvet cover, and that is the part that's hardest to replicate and the part that's hardest to make, and that's the opening of the duvet cover. In this case, it's not a zipper, it's buttons and buttonholes, but it could be a zipper in your case. If you have a small one, you can cut that part out. And what I did was I cut out, well, let me show them this one, I guess. I cut out the whole section of the buttonholes and the buttons and the strip beside it and the section of duvet cover that was right beside it, because I might as well keep that. So the first two sections there are the same green as the original cover, and then what I did is start adding sections onto that. And so it's a 4x4 grid, very simple and straightforward 4x4 grid on the back. And then I just stitched each piece together. And now I'm ironing the whole flat sections, all the seams in the back. And then I'm going to add a liner to the inside of this so that it will protect it and hopefully make it last longer, since I know it's older fabric and I don't want the fabric to give out. I want it to last for a long time. So it's an ironing day on a hot August afternoon, and that's okay when you really care about your work and the person you're doing work for. It makes it easy, right? So that is the strategy that I took, and the idea is that if you want to start with a smaller one and go to a bigger one, we could have done it a whole bunch of different ways. Excuse me. Oh, the iron. We could have done it a bunch of different ways. We could have, I'll show you some of the drawings that we had. We could have quilted it, you know, with different patterns. We could have quilted it with different patterns all around. And we tried out a bunch of different drawings. And in the end, to find a balance of one that was something I could do and something that wouldn't take too long and something that would look good, we ended up with a pretty straight grid pattern. And so we went through my vintage fabric stash and picked out fabrics that go well with this green. And I just started cutting them up into 16-inch squares. Excuse me, into 23.5-inch squares. 16 of them on each side, so a total of 32 sections to stitch together. Alright, so what I'm doing right now is ironing open all the seams of this 16 by 16 gridded quilt I've made. So, here's the size and the look of the quilt as I've been making. It's a duvet cover going from a twin size to a queen / full size, and I've kept the most important part, which is the buttonhole and button strip. I've kept that whole strip. I just cut it right out of the old duvet cover. See, just cut that strip out because I don't want to redo a bunch of the heaviest work, right? I cut that strip out, and I kept the 2 squares of area around that opening. And then the rest is just a grid. It's a whole grid, 16 square grid, 4 by 4 of 23.5-inch squares. And so now I'm at the very end of just ironing all these seams open. And then the next step is going to be to put a liner on this back side. Now there are a lot of different ways we could have gone about this. I had a twin size duvet cover, and the person I'm making it for really liked that fabric, but needed it to be a full size or a queen size, which is the same, as it turns out, about 92 inches. They sort of the technical size is 92 inches long and 90 inches wide. Well, I don't know, in my book there's no reason not to make that 90 by 90 or 92 by 92, because squares are easier, right, than rectangles, because you can make everything go in either direction, and it's like less complications, right, fewer complications. So I made it so that it's 16 quilted squares on each side at about 23.5 inches for each square. Made it so that it goes 4 squares by 4 squares on each side, and that each of these squares is 23.5 inches. The trick for me in a small creative space is that I don't even really have a good area where I can lay out something that's 23 inches by 23 inches. I could have taken every single thing off my table, and I guess I could have had that space, but that's complicated to do. I'm a multimedia artist, so I have a lot of things going at any one time. So, you know, even measuring things is kind of inefficient for me, but I did it anyway. And not all my measurements were exact, so I ended up with a 22 inch by 23 inch rectangle, 22 by 23.5 inch rectangle as the size I ended up with, in order to make all the sizes the same. Some sizes were a little off after I cut them, so, you know, there's some imperfections, that's okay. But I ended up with this is a size that's going to be just the right size for the person I'm making it for, and I think it'll be perfect. So I could have gone a whole bunch of different ways with this, making it from a smaller one to a larger one, but the way I went about it was to cut the existing small one up into squares, treat it like a quilt, treat it like quilt squares, and pick out some additional fabric and cut those up into squares as well, and make a quilt out of it. So this is the inside, the back side, that I stitched all together. So you can kind of see, you know, what I've been doing for the past week or week and a half is like cutting and stitching this beautiful thing together. And since I've put a lot of love into this, I want it to last a long time. So the strategy I'm taking is to iron these seams open, even though that's a lot more work. It's another hour or two of work on a hot day, but it means that I can smoothly add a liner to this that will then I hope make this whole thing hold up a lot longer, and that maybe this will be something that person can have it for the rest of their life, or you know, at least longer than a year or two. What do you think when you so this is the back side of the quilt. It started with this green twin size duvet cover. Now come on, baby. And the strategy I took was to cut the current duvet cover up into like quilt squares, and cut up some of my vintage stash of fabric up into quilt squares, and stitch it all together like a quilt. But there was one important thing that I did that made it work great, that I think, at least so far, is making it work great. And that is that, just pick it up here and show you. This is the key part of the strategy here. This, let me show the front side. This is the original opening of the twin size duvet cover. And what I did was keep that part. I cut that all out. I cut the twin size of the duvet cover out, and I kept it, and I stitched it into the quilt, as so it's now the opening for the bigger quilt, because I didn't want to redo a bunch of buttons and buttonholes. And so I took the greens, and I'm sorry if the lettering is backwards for you, but I took the G, everywhere it says G, that's the green squares. I cut up the green squares into 23.5-inch squares. And then I have 3 or 4 other colored fabrics that we picked out to go with this fabric, and mixed them up on the pattern on the paper first, and then just cut them into 23.5-inch squares, and just stitch them all together like any old regular, very straightforward quilt. I am not a fancy quilter. I'm not trying to make a really great art quilt out of this. This is just a straightforward project for somebody. And then right now, these are all stitched together, and these are all stitched together, and they're stitched together here at the ends. And now I'm opening up the seams in the back so I can add a liner. And then once the liner is added, I'll stitch the whole thing shut all the way around the edge. And this will be the opening where they can put in the queen size or full size duvet. And I'm hoping that this strategy of putting a liner on the back of this, which is taking a lot more work than if I just send it without the liner, I'm hoping the strategy of the liner is going to make this blanket last a lot longer, but I guess time will tell on that. I'd love to know if anybody has any comments or suggestions about that, if that's something you've ever done, or if you think that will help, if you think it's a good bet or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're almost at the end of this part, and I'm really glad, because this is so hot. Okay. So let's see this right here. Into the end. You guys can't feel heat through YouTube, but wow, it's a hot day to be standing over an iron. Oh, the last section, thank goodness. I'm so glad. So some of the 23.5 inch by 23.5 inch squares, 4 of them are made up of 4 littler squares stitched together, because this great fabric of this shirt, I only had pieces big enough for a quarter that size, so I had to stitch together the 23.5 inch by 23.5 inch squares in 4 cases. But that's okay, it was worth it because this fabric is so great. I loved this shirt. It just didn't, it was one of those shirts that, even though the fabric is great, the shirt wasn't, it just didn't ever hang right, you know? So it never did. I've had this shirt for 30 years probably, waiting to use the fabric. And even back when I was like young and fit, it didn't hang right. So I'm happy to have found a way to use the fabric for someone that I love. It is hot and I'm getting impatient. I really want to be done with this portion. And I need to be careful not to make a mistake or hurt myself at this point in the process. That's what usually happens when you're in a hurry, right? Yeah. Okay, that is the end of the ironing. And I am a happy girl. Okay, so now I get to show off how great it looks, all told. Okay, so here it is, all finished. I mean, not all finished, but all ironed and looking great. This is the part with the buttons on it. It is so big. This is so big. Okay. Now I have to find a way to measure this. If you have a small workspace, you know the difficulty I'm having right now. Oops, that's the fan. The difficulty I'm having is that there isn't really a good space to measure this. But I'm gonna try anyway. So I'm gonna try it right here. And make sure, you know, measure twice, cut once, right? So I'm gonna check my measurements here and see how close you are, because I need to know now what size the liner needs to be. So let me just check on if you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so measuring across. Take it section by section. So measure to there and then pinch. Measure to there. Next little bit and then pinch. If you have a small workspace, you probably feel me here trying to measure something that's longer than the table. that I have to measure things on. Okay, and measure things. What are we doing here? Okay, so it's 86 inches across. 86 inches across. And that means after the seam allowance, it'll be, I'll say 85 because, no, I'll say it'll be 84 because some of the edges are uneven. Okay, that's the across the top. Now I need to measure down the bottom. Let's do it this way. Alrighty. This will be hopefully a good estimate here. Alright, down. Here it is. Pinched in there. This is a lot to manage, man. Sometimes I just wish I had a really big work table. Okay. I mean, I have a kind of a work table over here, a pretty big one, but I have stuff all over it from projects I'm working on, which, you know, pencils and pens and paint things and a lamp, and it makes it, you know, it's funny how a work table isn't really a work table. It's where you put the stuff that you need so that you can do your work. And then you don't have a work table. Okay. So this one side looks a little longer than the other. But it's about 91. So we'll say 90. It's about 90 long. Okay, so 84 by 90, that's roughly the size that I need of this liner. Whew. But isn't this looking great? I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not the most beautiful, you know, world-class duvet cover ever made, but, you know, when something like this is made with love and of nice soft vintage fabrics with a little color and a little life to it, I'm really happy with how this is coming out. I'm really, really happy about this. It makes me very proud to be finishing this up today for somebody, and I hope they like it when they get it. Okay, so we set this aside for a minute. And now the liner. The liners I want to use are these. I have multiples of these, and I just hope they're going to be big enough. I don't know if they're going to be big enough. Oh, this doesn't look big enough. Alright, well maybe I'll be stitching two together, but we'll see. Let's measure. Alright, so this one over here. There. Okay, this one's 70. 70, 71. 24 by 90. Okay, so if my duvet cover is 84 by 90. What did I just say? Measure twice, cut once. What did I just say this was? $70.50. This one's 70 and a half. Might need more. I have more than one of these, so that'll work. Right? Right. You can always stitch stuff together. That's why we have a sewing machine, right? Right. So then how long is this sucker? Let's see. Got it to here. $81. Okay. Now the truth is, these are 23 across. The liner actually would not have to go all the way to the end to be useful in protecting the seams and the fabric. I mean, sure, ideally it does, but I'm going to need 2 of these, one for each side. Oh God, I don't think I'm going to have 2 of them, am I? I'm not going to, I don't think I'm going to have 2 of them. Okay, well, I wonder if I'm going to have to make a liner for each of them that's smaller than the whole outside. Let's see. Oh, no, I've got a third one. I've got a third one, and maybe I've got a 4th one even. Okay. Wow, just gonna make this heavy. Okay. Maybe this is too thick and heavy. Maybe it should be a sheet instead. I wonder. It should be a sheet. Should it be a sheet instead of this heavy flannel? Is this heavy flannel going to make it too hot? Alright, I wonder if this is folded in quarters, in a good quarter. Pretty close to quarter. Okay, so I'm going to measure quarters. So, wow. So 50, 100, 200, that's almost 200 inches wide. Holy cow. This one is almost 200 inches wide. Right here, maybe even do it. This one, quarters. This one, quarters too. And this isn't exact. It's, it's close enough for right now. Okay. And this is 42 times 4 is 168 by 168. Oh my gosh. This piece right here gives me, the entire thing that I need. Because all I need is, I only need half of this. Half of this piece right here will be as big as I need for the liner, for both sides of the liner. And I can even keep the one fold. I have one less seam to sew. Well then. Well, I can't argue with that, can I? I cannot argue with that. All right, let's make sure that my math is right, because maybe I did this wrong. This doesn't look like it can't possibly be that big. No, I need this entire, it's that, no, that math is not right. My math can't be right. I need 90 by 84 and again 90 by 84. And I have 90 by 84 and 90 by 84. I think this is exactly double the size that I need. I think this is meaning exactly the right size. I really can think. I really can. Do the math. It's all math, man. Sewing is all math. You want to teach a kid math? Get sewing together. Okay, so yeah, so something was wrong with my math, right? So this piece is not. This is 43 twice. How did I end up with it 4 times? Okay, so 43 twice is 86. So no, that's totally wrong. Numbers were totally wrong. Now the question is, what's this measurement here? This is, I think this is going to be the size I need for one side. This is the size I'm going to need for one side of this duvet cover. That's what this is going to be. Because it's going to be about 100. About 100 inches. And I need 90. Yes, it's 98 inches. I don't know how I was doubling. I doubled it. Okay, so it's 98 by 86, and I need 90 by 84 twice. So this is one side. So this can be stitched right to one side. Right to, it's a little bit long. I just have to cut a few inches off. This is essentially, oh my gosh, the perfect size liner for one side. Okay. With a slight adjustment. All right. And then man, it is all math. And making sure your math is right. I'm not going to measure any folded amounts this time. I'm going to do it the right way this time instead of... Okay. 72. 72. By 78. So I take the long sides of each of these two smaller ones and stitch them together so it's wide, and it'll be 140 inches long, and I only need it to be 90 inches long, so I'll cut it partway. So more stitching. That's okay. That's okay. That's what we're about. Scissors. Good.
up to you.
When aren't you just the sweetest? I will need to eat at some point, won't I? I will need to eat at some point. I'm so determined to finish this tonight, and I've decided to add a liner to it so that it lasts longer. And that just kicked me right out of doing something fun with you tonight.
Right. Well, send me a package something when you want something to know. Or something up for that.
If you make something, it will be the right time, I bet you.
I was thinking about some of the
I would love that. Thank you, honey. Okay. 76 inches. And it's not going to be the full 84, but it's going to be close enough. And then, so let's take this whole piece. Let's now make sure again, not measuring twice. And measure twice. That was that length. And let's measure this length. Just measure, oh no, this is right. 74. 74. It's 74 by 76. God, it's so much math. Okay, 74 by 76. And we're just going to measure this end again. And measure it all the way around. All right. So, if you've just come on, what I'm working on is the liner for this quilted duvet cover that I'm making, and I've made it from a twin duvet cover to a full/queen duvet cover, and I've got the quilted part all stitched together, which I can show you again in a second. 80 inches. And that side is 80 inches, so one side's longer than the other. One side's longer than the other. You gotta love it. Okay. So this is gonna be one liner. We're gonna cut some of that first. So if you've just come on, this is the duvet cover that I'm working on. It started out as a twin that was this color. And the two key parts of the strategy that I developed, if I can find it, it's now a queen/full size. It's so big, I can't find it. What I did was make it into a quilt size, a quilt strategy, right? I needed more fabric, so I kept the part where it's buttonholes and buttons. I kept that part, the opening of the duvet cover where the duvet goes in, and I kept the whole strip of fabric around it because I didn't want to redo that work. And I patterned a very straightforward 4x4 grid pattern quilt, front, top and bottom. And so picked out some fabrics that go with that original green and just sewed them together, straightforward, nothing earth-shattering at all, but it made it really simple and straightforward. So it's a 16 square on the top and 16 squares on the bottom, 4 squares by 4 squares of 23.5 inches each. And it was easy to cut those squares out of the original size because I had this big thing. But the rest were out of my vintage fabrics, and I'll show you. Over here is a little bit of my vintage fabrics. That's my stash organized by color. And we picked out these, that's not all of them, but that's the ones in the light there. We picked out all these different these different fabrics, and I've just stitched them together. And what I've finished today is I've just finished ironing all the seams flat on the back on the inside. And because these are vintage fabrics, and because I've done a ton of work on this and I'd like this project to last, what I'm working on now is I have this old like flannel batting that I've had for a long time. It's like a flannel sheeting kind of thing. I don't know how many years I've had this, probably 20, 30 years. I don't know. I've been raising kids. I don't know how long I've had it. A long time, right? And so I'm measuring these, and I'm going to use these as liners inside the duvet cover, one for the inside of each half. Because when that duvet gets shoved in and pulled out and shoved in and pulled out, maybe multiple times, I want this liner to help protect the fabric a little bit. And when the fabric gets, you know, used and worn on the outside, I want the support of the liner, like an interfacing, you know, to kind of help keep it in place. So I can show you this is the, you know, we went through a bunch of pattern possibilities, but this is what we ended up with, a very straight grid, 4 squares by 4 squares, 23.5 inches each. And that takes it from the twin size to the full / queen size, roughly. You know, I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist about this, but that's roughly the right size. And it looks great, you know, I mean, I think anyway. So I am now working on this liner part, and so I'm gonna have let's see, it's gonna be 76 to 80 inches across. So it's gonna be, I'll do this in front of you. So it's gonna be the liner is gonna be 76 to 80 inches across, because it varies in length. It's an old piece. And it's going to be 74 inches long. So it's going to be like this. This is the original, this is the whole piece I'm going to have. It's not going to, as a liner, it's not going to go all the way to the edge of this duvet cover, which I would prefer, but I'm just not going to get everything I want on this one side, on the one half. So on the other piece, it's going to be 76 to 80 inches across. And this is 74. And then this other piece is 81 inches across. So it might be a little longer, a little wider, I mean. And I only need, let's see, I've got 74, 84, so I need 10 inches. I need 10 inches of that. I mean, I guess if I was smart, I would use the wider one, but that's okay. This is what I'm going to do, 10 inches of this one. I need 10 inches by its long side. It's so much math to do this project. Well, there we have it. I guess that really wouldn't matter. But pick the long side. Okay, so this looks like the 81 inch side. Let's measure twice and cut once. Okay, let's make sure this is the long side. Hey, oh, thank you. That was fast.
Right, so roots, and I didn't see anything in terms of this little this one.
You're amazing, honey. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is supposed to be the 80-inch side, and it's 82 inches actually. Yeah, 81, 82. Okay, so 82. And I want 10 inches of this blanket. So I'm gonna cut down 10 inches worth. Just a really small amount. Oh, but I need another inch for seam allowance, so I mean half inch, but that's okay. So this is going to be a little bit of a jury rig job, so I am just cutting at 11 inches right here. I am not trying to mark this thing. If you can see, this is probably a vintage, I mean, this is vintage flannel batting. I don't have any idea how old this is, but it is old. It is not perfect or even edged or anything, so I am not trying to make this into anything perfect. I am going to be lucky to get this done by the end of tonight, so there's that. Now, I need to, I really should do this with my rotary cutter, but I don't have a good place to cut with it, honestly. It's just such an inefficient, I don't know if you guys have this, but I have a hugely inefficient system here, so I am often just trying to kind of jury rig it and get it done. I don't know, if you're a perfect sewist or something, you're going to be horrified by my methods, so I urge you to click right off immediately. I am not anyone's perfect sewist. 11. Alright, so I'm just cutting this to approximately 11 inches because I need 10. And that'll give me the ability to have a little bit of play. Okay, 11 inches. This is not the right number of inches. I took the wrong number. It's 74 and it needs to go to 90. I needed 16 inches, which means I needed 17 inches. So this is not going to go all the way to the bottom either. It's just the way that's going to be because I just made a mathematical mistake. I'm telling you, it's all math, and I did it wrong. This number here is 74 from 90, the 16. That's how many inches I needed, not 10. I needed 16. 74 plus 16 is 90. Math, it's all math. All right, so if you've just joined me, I'm working on the liner, for a duvet cover that I'm making from what was a twin size into a full/queen size. And I've shown the full thing, and I can show it to you again in a second. I've shown the design I've done of the quilting. It's a very straightforward grid pattern, 4 squares by 4 squares, and they're 23.5 inches each, and square. And then that takes it from, I used some squares from the original twin size, and that makes it, along with the other squares, that makes it into a 92-inch, approximately 90-inch duvet cover, which is about the right size for what we want. And now what I'm working on is cutting the liner to go with that, to go on the inside of that duvet cover. And so the key on the duvet cover is that the strategy that I took was to use, I wanted to use the original fabric from the twin size duvet cover, but it wasn't big enough, of course, to turn it into queen or full size, which is about 92 inches. So what I did was quilt it with a bunch of other fabric, because I have this huge stash of vintage fabrics over here that I've collected like my whole life. And so we looked at those fabrics and picked some out that go with it. And so I made it into a very simple grid pattern quilt. That's each just four squares by 4 squares on each side. And the each quilt square is 23.5 inches by 23.5 inches. And I'll show you that design. So that design is right here. Very straightforward. I just took it and made it into a 4x4 pattern with each different color marked on here. And the key thing though was I kept the buttonhole and buttons strips. I cut that out of the old one with the green still attached, and I put that, I just built the new duvet cover right off of that with the quilt squares coming off of there. This left me a really simple, time-consuming but simple sewing job to just put the quilt squares together on here. These are just my different pattern color representations. And I kept the original buttons and buttonholes, and I didn't have to do that work, which just saved me time and effort that I didn't want to do. And having finished that now, I can show you this is what it looks like. It's all, you know, rolled up because I've just finished ironing all the seams flat on the inside. And these are the colors that we picked for it. And now what I'm working on is this cotton flannel as a liner to go on the inside of each side of this duvet cover, so that when the duvet goes in and out of the opening of this thing, that it won't wreck the piece so much. Since these are older fabrics, I just don't want to have the whole thing fall apart, you know, and get wrecked because the fabric won't hold up. And I'm hoping that this, also vintage, old white flannel sheeting or whatever here will help by being a nice solid liner for the inside of this duvet cover. So I've just gotten this piece here. Let's see, that's the big long one. Where did I just put it? Here we go. So we're gonna add, gotta stitch a little piece onto this piece here to make this the liner for one of the insides. You know, it seems so simple when you start out, but of course every little thing is just a lot of work. It just is. It's all just a lot of work. You got to keep measuring it and make sure you have the right piece. You got to check your numbers. Then you find out you made a mistake. You've got to go back and do it again. It's all math, and it's just sweat and time and work. Let's see. So this is the 81-inch side. So this is the side we want to stitch. Make sure I'm right about that. 81-inch side. This is the side, the long side. So we want to stitch this to the long side of this. So it should be that I should be able to. This should pin together pretty nicely. They should be approximately the same width. Let's see if that's going to be right. And then this should be about the right length for the insert of this on the one side. It's going to be off a little. Yeah, here we go. Because they're not exactly the same size. These are really old vintage pieces that were, you know, I don't know how they were made. They're really old. I don't know where I found them or when I found them. It was a long time ago though. I've probably had them 20 years. So I'm just gonna pin these together a little bit, just, you know, a long distance apart, but just to kind of hold the concept together. And then I'm going to stitch this together, and then I'm going to stitch it onto the one finished side of the duvet cover. And then I have another piece that's about the right size. We'll stitch that onto the other side of the finished duvet cover. And then, in theory, shortly after that, I should be able to stitch all the sides closed and have a finished duvet cover. I've been at this for days, and it's, I'm trying to get it to the person I love, and it's hot, and I don't know, I'm cranky. It's summer, and I've been standing over hot iron for, I think, 2 hours. So I'd love to know what you guys are up to today. Well, sorry, you can't see my face. I'd love to know what you guys are up to today. If this is something that seems like crazy to you, I'm just looking at my laptop to see if there's any comments or questions. If this is something that you've done before, if you have any thoughts or expertise you want to share with me, I would love to hear it. This is my first time doing this kind of project, so I definitely welcome input. Okay. All right, so now I'm done. I am actually done with the ironing board. So maybe put it away. I want to put it away. Kind of makes a handy, easy table now and then. Just set it here for now. All right, chair. Open up the thingamajig. All right. So I'll bring you. Stitching will be a little bit more interesting. Excuse me with the movement, sorry about that. But make it more interesting perhaps. Okay, remove my. Do you have a summer drink that you love? I live for mine, which is water mostly, and then a little bit of mango juice, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and some sparkling water, and an electrolyte mix that I made. Potassium and magnesium and other goodies, and that really helps me a lot in the summer. Okay, oh my goodness. I don't know if you have a small workspace, but my sewing table here is just this big. It is like 3.5 feet long, maybe. And it is my husband's grandmother's vanity, which means the space for my legs is about this wide, and my legs are cramped in there like sardines, and it makes for very awkward sewing, I will tell you. Alrighty. Oh, I just turned it off instead of, oh, nope, plug it in. Oh, there we go. Oh. Yep. So, when you have only one really good working electrical thingamajig right here, and you have to move your plugs around every time around the room. Oh my goodness. Let's try that. be complaining about the cold before long. So I am stitching this is this beautiful, like, antique, I don't know, like flannel batting or flannel sheeting, or I don't know what they called it. It's got like a surged edge, but it feels very homemade, you know. Oh, this is altogether the wrong thread. Altogether the wrong color thread. And it doesn't really matter because no one's going to see it, but I've used almost all of my dark colored bobbins on the quilt itself. And I'm going to put in a light color because I might as well, because I have it to use. Just reflect this one too. I have a, hey puppy. I only have a white one, do I? Oh yes, I do. There we go. Alright, if you want to see this part, oops, sorry, okay, let's see if this works. Let's see if this is going to work. It doesn't have a hole on that end, does it? Oh, that's not. I'm going to get a little of this. Alright, third try. Third try is a charm. Now, I don't need an intense stitch for this. I'm just going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance and just go straight up stitch. the two widths here aren't the same, so it's okay that they're not perfectly matched. That doesn't bother me. This is just like a facing, along facing, so that is okay. So now I have two pieces that should fit roughly, one a little bit small and one a little bit large actually that I'll have to cut. Two pieces of liner that should fit inside the duvet cover that I have made. So now the question is, this is where I wish I had one really big flat table where I could lay the whole thing out. And let me just turn this up for a second. If you, like me, have a small workspace or are a multimedia artist, like I am, and you have many projects, so therefore, even if you have an okay size space, you have many things going on there, and so you don't, I don't have one big table that's dedicated to sewing, right? If I only did sewing, I would have a big table dedicated to that, but I have a big table, kind of big table, that's dedicated to everything I do, and I do painting and fabric crafts and multimedia stuff and altered books and all kinds of things. So I can't, the table has got all kinds of stuff on it, so at all times something is going on, more than the one project I'm working on. So I don't have a big space to lay this out the way I would like. So I'm going to have to like jury rig this a little bit. I mean, it's like 90 inches by 80 inches. That's a big area. Maybe I could lay it out on a bed. Since it's a blanket, I could lay it out on a bed. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lay it out on a bed. I'm gonna see if it works. I'm gonna eat some dinner, and I am going to come back with a second one either tonight or tomorrow and show you the next step and the finished step. And if you've been with me any of this time since I started tonight, I really appreciate it. And this project has come along really well, and I hope you join me again for the next one. All right, thanks for coming up.